Hello and welcome to another episode of Critiquing the Critics. Today we are re-reviewing The Angry Video Game Nerd, and since we already used his opening theme in my last review of him, we can finally use my opening theme again.
He's gonna take you back to the past.
Aww.
To play the shitty games that suck ass. He'd rather have a buffalo. Take a diarrhea dump in his ear. He'd rather eat the rotten asshole of a roadkill skunk and down it with beer. He's the angriest gamer you've ever heard. He's the angry Nintendo nerd. He's the angry Atari Sega nerd. He's the angry video game nerd.
There are a few reasons for me to take on AVGN once more. The first probably being that my initial review, well, sucked. But times change, people change, and trends change, and my opinion on the nerd has both expanded and morphed into something similar yet different. And I feel the need to share all of this with you. Am I retracting my fan status? No, I still do enjoy his works, but I no longer can just express enthusiasm for them. This is a three-part review, with this part focusing on the nerd at his prime, the next focusing on what he's become, and the third focusing on why he's become what he's become and whether or not that is a good thing. Now, of course, we all know who the Angry Video Game Nerd is, but for the sake of being organized, let's just pretend that we don't. He is a caustic critic, played by James Rolfe, who reviews retro video games, older systems, and even some older accessories. The whole point is that he is this bitter, angry, lifeless nerd who just spends his time freaking out about video games. And as a reminder, while I'm going to refer to this all in the present tense, this video focuses on what the nerd used to be like. So let's bring up the reviewer Triforce and break the Angry Video Game Nerd down. Well, the Triforce is a bit unreliable here, as the nerd tends to switch up his priorities quite often. Sometimes they're more informative, sometimes they're spectacle, sometimes they're just meant to be comical. But the humor is the most consistent, so let's put that on the top right there. Now for some context. My first AVGN review was his review of Friday the 13th, and I wasn't really impressed at the time. While it had its moments, I just heard lots of excess profanity, and while I'm no prude, I find lots of cussing to be rather obnoxious. But for some reason, as time went on, it began to grow on me. Soon, I found myself liking his Friday the 13th review, and I started pillaging through the rest of his videos. I was really enjoying them. So why did I change my mind? This is the type of humor I wouldn't usually like. I generally just find it juvenile on paper. So why do I enjoy it so much? Why Rolfe and not his slew of imitations? It's not that his jokes are any classier. Generally, his style of humor is just saying fucking shit a lot, and his use of expletives aren't witty or unique. Well, it eventually occurred to me that the nerd wasn't a success because of his jokes. It was how he delivered them. It's Rolfe's conviction in what he's saying that makes it work. Rolfe is a rather limited actor, but he does well within those limitations. He only has a few facial expressions, for example, but he rarely needs to go beyond those few expressions. He also has perfect control of his voice. It sounds like he's recording the audio while he's playing the game, even though he's obviously not. The jokes might be lowbrow, but Rolfe conveys the right attitude for them. This helps with the actual critiquing. The nerd seems to be genuinely interested in what he's saying, which makes me interested in what he's saying. Very few reviewers feel natural when they're discussing a game in a scripted review, but Rolfe usually does. In short, the nerd's general humor comes from the fact that we believe he's annoyed when playing a crappy game, and we find it funny because we could see what's pissing him off. Sometimes it's even nostalgic. I remember I actually owned some of these games, and I remember suffering through the same problems. So I'm going to have an arrow go from the reviewer to the humor, because the humor comes from the delivery of the reviewer. But you might have the same reservations I did, and you might not like it for those same reasons. It just either works on you or it doesn't. Next is the critiquing. The nerd has a reputation for doing research on what he's playing, although yes, he has made mistakes. That Castlevania review, for example, will be mentioned more in the next video. But generally, I like the nerd's way of critiquing. He pulls us through the game with him, and we can at least see why the game is so messed up. As with most game reviewers, he discusses gameplay, graphics, soundtracks, and anything else that really needs mentioning. But the gameplay is what usually drives him crazy the most. His reviews have substance, and the nerd knows how to relay that information and insight. In my eyes, how one relates the information is just as important as the information itself. I mean, what's good about information if it's presented in a really boring way? Because even if the information is good, if you're bored throughout the review, you're not going to pick up on any of it. So the arrow represents his delivery of the criticisms once again. And the criticisms have enough substance that it gets its own arrow pointing up. But while a bonus, I wouldn't recommend the nerd solely upon that. Since he's a character who accentuates the negative, you can't always tell if he's being honest or if he's exaggerating. So keep all of that in mind. Finally, we have the technicals. If you've watched his earliest reviews, you will see that the nerd began as a low-key reviewer, complete with shoddy production values and everything. But soon his videos were among the most professional-looking videos out there. He's got some high-tech equipment, which means perfect audio, video, game footage, editing, and the special effects are pretty good for a video review too. He often uses sketches, and many are just getting tired of that whole concept. To a point, I am too. But I do think Rolf is probably the best director when it comes to sketches. While I'm probably going to be hated for this, the best way to explain this is to compare and contrast him with the Irate Gamer. While having weak writing and acting skills, it is generally agreed that Chris Boras has strong production values, and I personally believe is a passable director of sketches. But thankfully, Chris has blatantly ripped off James so much, and that makes this so much easier to explain. Just watch an Irate Gamer sketch.
Well, this game sucks, and just don't go near the thing because it absolutely... What the hell? Uh-oh! What the hell?
The direction is very minimalist. Its style can be summed up as point and shoot. And while everything is framed competently, Irate Gamer sketches tend to lack energy. So why is James Rolfe the better director?
I'd rather fucking eat my fucking balls off and puke them up my fucking ass. I'd rather piss a cactus out of my dick. The music is fucking worse than life itself, and I turn the volume down except for the fact that I have to hear the Jason alarm. It's all just a test of patience, and it can kiss my fucking asshole. Piece of shit. You're easier to beat in real life than you are in that fucking game, you no good piece of...
James just does so much more with it. There's a lot more close-ups. The editing is much edgier. I like what he does with the music, how the camera is constantly moving. It's a nice effect when it starts shaking at one point. Yeah, there are a few moments that look rather staged and phony, but for the most part, for a video review, I thought it was really well done. I'd even say that at parts you really feel like you're watching an actual movie. So I definitely say that James is the superior director. Rolfe knows the importance of using different angles in a shoot and how they can increase dramatic tension. Now I'm sure many of you are thinking, dramatic tension? The hell? Aren't these videos supposed to be funny? Well, that's part of the joke. It's funny because it's shot as if it's being dead serious. In essence, he's a director. This was arguably his most popular strength. But as we will see in the next video, it would ultimately lead to a lot of people turning their backs on him. But for now, he gets an arrow that shoots up, and one aimed at the humor too, since the sketches clearly boost the jokes. So I'd say that when he began in 2004, he was a 3-star reviewer who evolved into a 4-star reviewer. Unfortunately, he kept trying to make his videos bigger and bigger and more ambitious, and honestly, I think his reviews have begun to collapse on their own weight. In my opinion, the angry video game nerd has become more of an imitation of himself, or worse, an imitation of his imitations. But at least that would make him the best of his own imitations. So we'll talk more about that in the next video. My name is Marshall Hard. I'm here to tell you that those who cannot do, critique.